Okay, so new aim 8.1. This is a new unit. This is the Byzantine Empire. And what were the reasons the Roman Empire collapsed? We just kind of discussed some of your responses to that. So here we go. All right, review of the reasons for collapse. I'll give you a second here. So, like we said, there's a lot of contributing factors to the collapse of Rome. I know when we did our classwork, we tried to kind of zero in on what we thought is the most kind of legitimate factor that contributed to the collapse. And you guys, came up with a bunch of them. But in summary, it's weak rulers, it's economic trouble. Trade is being disrupted by outside influences. This is, barbarian invasions are part of that. So, as the barbarian Germanic tribes kind of invade, and we'll talk about that next unit. This disrupts trade, and this has obviously profound impacts on economic stability. And once economic stability comes under fire, it's kind of the beginning of the end, right? We also talked about a decrease in food production as a result of overworked soil, and with those weak rulers, the kind of the contributing factor that kind of goes along with that, the supplementary fact, is that the military leaders under those rulers start to kind of compete against each other for power because they recognize the weak leadership that exists. So they all kind of get big eyes in the way that they think they can kind of wrestle control, and a lot of them attempt to do so. So this creates a pretty chaotic and unstable environment. So it's kind of all of these. And look, there was a lot of other things too, right? This is just a couple of the big ones. But all these things kind of work together to kind of finish off Rome. And this is kind of where we're at. Okay. I'll give you a second here. All right. With regard to the topic that we're kind of moving into, the Byzantine Empire, this is important information. So in the very, very late stages of the Roman Empire, we get an emperor named Diocletian who starts to really realize that running an empire this big is really, really difficult. It's difficult economically. It's difficult politically. It's difficult socially also. So these lenses through which we examine societies, political, economic, social, all three of these lenses indicate that this is kind of a difficult arrangement to maintain. So Diocletian decides what he's going to do. He's essentially going to split the empire in half. There will be a western half of the Roman Empire, and there will be an eastern half of the Roman Empire. Each of these halves of the Roman Empire will have their own emperors. They will have their own economic systems. They will have their own militaries. They're almost run as two separate kind of entities. And again, this is because it's Diocletian's opinion that an empire of this size is too difficult to run. So the next part of this story is that when Constantine becomes emperor after Diocletian, he moves the capital from Rome to a city called Byzantium. Now, Rome, we know on the Italian peninsula. We've done a lot of work in this particular area, so we know where that is. And he moves the capital from Rome to Byzantium, which is on the coast of the Black Sea here. You could see it, home of Emperor Diocletian. Diocletian is from here. And Constantine moves the capital there. This is important for a number of reasons. This becomes the new seat of power for the Roman Empire. So this is almost like once the capital moves from Rome to Byzantium, which will later be renamed Constantinople after Emperor Constantine, this is kind of the beginning of the end. Or the end of the end, if you want to say it that way, of the Roman Empire. The western half of the Roman Empire is kind of left to wither to a certain extent, and it's kind of abandoned and lacks leadership essentially. So this is kind of really the end of the end here. And then what we're left with is this eastern half of the Roman Empire. Once the capital moves, this eastern half of the Roman Empire is renamed and restructured as what's called the Byzantine Empire. So the map on the left here, you can see this is what used to be all of the Roman Empire. And then the empire split in half, and the Byzantine Empire is this purplish color here, while the remainder of what's left of the Roman Empire is this orange color here. And that's pretty much it. So as we move forward, when we talk about the Byzantine Empire, and the question comes up, what is the relationship between the Byzantine Empire and the Roman Empire? We need to have a discussion about how the Byzantine Empire rises out of the eastern half of the Roman Empire. So that's the important information that we need from this whole thing. So this aim really serves the purpose to talk about how we transition from a collapsing but unified Roman Empire into a kind of a separated and restructured Byzantine Empire. And that's really what this is about. A lot of people refer to the Byzantine Empire as Rome 2.0 kind of thing because it is born out of the Roman Empire. A lot of the cultural elements are very, very similar. A lot of the political, economic, and social systems that exist here are copies of the Roman versions. So culturally speaking, at least for a majority of the beginning stages of this, the Byzantine Empire looks very, very much like the Roman Empire with regard to customs, traditions, society, etc. Now, there will be kind of new things that happen here that differentiate it from the Roman Empire, but this is kind of the idea. So as we move forward, we will kind of talk about how the Byzantine Empire is kind of unique from Rome. And, that's part of the discussion also. So just be advised that as we move forward, when we're talking about the Byzantine Empire, we're really talking about the eastern half of what was the Roman Empire. And that's what we need to know.